Welcome to the Austin Forum Upload, the podcast of the Austin Forum on Technology and Society. I'm Jay Boisseau, the Executive Director and founder of the Austin Forum, and we're very pleased in today's episode to have a longtime friend, collaborator, and partner of the Austin Forum as a sponsor, Hugh Forrest, the co-president of South by Southwest. Hugh, thanks for joining us again this year to give us a preview of what's coming up.
Jay, thanks for having me. It's always great to be involved in many different ways with the Austin Forum.
And we, of course, appreciate that and the many years of support. As most of our listeners probably know, Austin Forum was inspired by South by Southwest Interactive and a desire to have that kind of content throughout the year. So thanks for all that you do for South by Southwest. And we are going to get into it right now. So, Hugh, let's start with a softball. How would you describe to listeners who aren't familiar, especially with the interactive and tech components of South by Southwest, what it is and what it's become?
South by Southwest is a multi-day celebration of creativity, innovation, discovery in all its many forms that ranges from music, from films, to technology, to food, to fashion, just all kinds of different kinds of content. In our finest days, South by Southwest is a place to discover what's going to be hot in the next 2 to 3 years, whether, again, that is from a technology standpoint, or whether that's an up-and-coming filmmaker, a new band, some kind of new trend that you haven't quite heard of yet, but you come to South by Southwest, you experience it, and then you see it out in the real world a little while later.
Yeah, I always love attending and catching a band or a movie that hasn't come out yet, but also, of course, the tech content. And I do feel like I'm more informed and more in the know, and maybe I've seen something that's really going to blow up. And in past years, of course, you've had several technologies blow up at South by Southwest. I believe Twitter was one of those, right?
And when this airs, Jay, Twitter is still going to be alive? Yes, Twitter would... Twitter.
Hey, you were responsible for the rise of Twitter, not the fall.
We're all involved, Jay, as the movie says. We are all involved. Twitter got its first big push at South by Southwest 2007, 15 years ago. And we've had a number of other technologies, platforms that have had similar success out of the event. One of the things that I think the commonalities there are the technologies that do the best at South by Southwest. The startups that do the best at South by Southwest are the startups and technologies that help attendees absorb, experience, digest the event. And with Twitter, it was even Twitter in its very young form, it was a way where you could see what sessions your friends were going to, what bands they were seeing, what they were having for lunch, where you could meet up with them. And it instantly caught on with this very connected crowd that we have that comes to South by Southwest.
Yeah. So tech has been a part of South by Southwest for quite a while. I know not from the beginning, it started with music, but how long has interactive and tech been part of the festival and conference?
South by Southwest started in 1987, as you say, as a music-only event. In 1994, 7 years later, we added what was then called film and multimedia. And that was the first real integration of tech into the event. At that point, in 1994, the kind of state of the art in terms of tech or multimedia was CD-ROMs. But that fairly quickly shifted over to this emerging thing, this emerging internet thing. And certainly, per my comment about Twitter, a lot of the growth of South by Southwest from a tech standpoint was being at the right place at the right time on social media. So whether it was Friendster or MySpace or Twitter or Facebook or Foursquare or Meerkat, these things all had a big presence at South by Southwest, and these are things that very much helped us to grow to a much bigger event.
Great. Well, let's now move into what's coming up. And one of the things our listeners should know is that it's no longer just South by Southwest film and music and interactive, but you've got many other tracks like comedy and food and things like that. But you also have these themes, and I find these themes really interesting because that's how you solicit content that you think is going to be both creative and impactful, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've done more in recent years in terms of trying to establish what the overall arching themes are for the event. And it is always challenging because one of the upsides of South by Southwest is there's just so much stuff going on. So it's hard to pick out a few themes. We had, at one point we had 10 themes, and we had a few years ago we had 10 themes for that year's event. Then we went down to 5, and this year I think we're, we've really gone back to where we were before, which was more aligning themes with some of the new track content that we have.
So can you share some of those themes and some of the track content?
Absolutely. I mean, 5 of the new tracks and themes that we've pushed more for, or that will shape a lot of the flavor of 2023 are as follows. You mentioned food. We've had a food track before. We didn't have a food track for a while. We've brought food back in this year as a track, and feel like that there's a lot of innovation and in the food space that makes sense to showcase at South by Southwest, whether that is, artificial meat or food distribution systems, new ways of thinking about how to distribute food and in third world countries. So a lot of stuff there, and really excited to have that back on board. We also have for 2023 a new track which is called Markets and Economies, and that will focus on everything from the supply chain challenges and whatnot to some of the new markets that have emerged since the pandemic, how we experience those markets, how those markets fit into the larger economy. That's I think very interesting. We added a travel and leisure track for 2023, and that I think was initially aligned with the whole concept of revenge travel coming out of the pandemic, that people were traveling more. We've continued to have arguments. Well, was this really worthy of being a track and being a kind of theme? And then, you see something over the holidays like the mess with Southwest Airlines, and you think, well, yeah, this is something that bears a lot of importance and reflection on an event like South by Southwest. We have another track that we've had for a while, but we changed the name a little bit for 2023 is what we're now calling Workplace Revolution. And again, that really aligns with how people are working in 2023, whether that is work from home, whether that is this idea of a 4-day work week, whether that is more gig economy, all kinds of stuff like that. But I think we all generally understand that the pandemic accelerated these trends of changing workplace dramatically. And I don't think we're returning to how workplaces were pre-pandemic. And then last thing I'll say, and you and I were just reflecting on this before you hit the record button, is we have traditionally had a track that focused on MR or VR or XR. This year, we have changed that to XR and Metaverse, which reflects a growing interest in Metaverse-related technology. I think that many in your audience will debate, and rightly so, is the Metaverse really a thing? Is it still hype? Is Metaverse, this year's version of crypto? Who knows? Or it's still, I think the jury's a little bit out here. There's certainly a lot of money research being poured into the metaverse, but there's certainly still a degree of skepticism on what this concept really is. I will also say that beyond that, I mean, some of the kind of evergreen themes that we have, well, first and foremost is creativity. Our mission statement, our purpose statement at South by Southwest is South by Southwest helps creative people achieve their goals. That's what we focused on way back in 1987. It's what we continue to focus on in 2023. This idea that it's a very creative city, it's a very creative audience that we bring together, and how can we help them achieve their goals? We also very much focus on inspiration, the kinds of, trying to showcase the kinds of content that's going to inspire our audience, give them optimism about the future, give them the kind of creative juices, recharge they need to go out there and do amazing things. And the last thing I'll say here is discovery is essentially an evergreen theme at South by Southwest, that we have we create this vehicle where you can go learn about things that you already know, but you can also learn about things and experience things that you had no knowledge of before. And in that sense, just discover a whole lot of new content, a whole lot of new ideas in a very short period of time. And that is part of the whirlwind of activity and engagement that is the South by Southwest experience.
Great. So you had a submission deadline that was several months ago, but that submission deadline is not the only way that you program South by Southwest. You also fill in some gaps as well. So can you characterize the kind of submissions you saw as of several months ago, and any new content and programming you may have added to the overall festival based on emerging trends in technology, maybe things that have emerged since that deadline?
Yeah, I mean, when you say submission deadline, you're referring to our panel picker process, which we ask for speaking proposals through this panel picker process in June and July, and that those speaking proposals end up forming about 70 to 75% of our content at the event. Per where I was a few minutes ago, we got a ton of speaking proposals this year on the metaverse, and those ranged from the obvious, how the metaverse, how the gaming industry is pushing the future of the metaverse, to things like how you're advertising agency, how to advertise in the metaverse, how bands will perform in the metaverse, things like that. So again, there was lots and lots of related content on the metaverse, and saw a big spike in that as compared to the 2022 panel picker submission process. The panel picker is something that we've been using at South by Southwest for more than 15 years in terms of getting our content, but one of the weaknesses of this system, as you reference, is we take entries in June and July, a full 8-9 months before the event, and then other technologies, other things happen after that. I would say that one of the biggest most obvious things that has happened since the close of the panel picker entry process is just the generative AI growing leaps and bounds, and particularly like something like GPT, which we didn't have. We had some content related to AI and generative AI in the panel picker, but certainly trying to pull in more of that now, given how buzzy that is, how interesting that is, how scary that is, all of the above, and how much it seems like it's going to change the process for creatives and the process for all of our society. Again, it seems like AI will be the trend of 2023. Not only at South by Southwest, but in the tech world in general, or in society in general. I don't know. Have you played around with ChatGPT much, or what are your thoughts there?
I have absolutely played around with it. As you know, my day job, I'm high performance computing and AI for Dell. And I am fascinated by the emergence of these generative AI technologies. In fact, we just recorded an Austin Forum upload episode last week, should come out any day, on Chat GPT specifically. That's how we came back after our break we focused on that for the first episode back from break. And in a few weeks, we're going to record a more general one on generative AI. So we'll talk about Lenza and Dolly and stable diffusion and some of the technologies for generating imagery as well as text. And I've also played with it directly. In fact, the new Austin Forum news post on our website now, I had Chat GPT write the first paragraph. In the second paragraph, I said the above was written by Chat GPT. And as you can see, it's really pretty good. But there's also some weaknesses in it as well. For example, Chat GPT can only be trained on text that's out there on the internet, not what's in my head and hasn't been added to the website yet. So it's a good general opening paragraph, but it also demonstrates some of the weaknesses of this. But unlike crypto and metaverse, which you've alluded to is having crypto's, of course, in the so-called trough of disillusionment right now, as the Gartner hype cycle would call it. By the way, I'm not anti-crypto. I personally think that this disillusionment is centered almost entirely around speculative investing as opposed to the fundamental capabilities of digital currency. So I believe it will, just like in the Gartner hype cycle, rise back out of that trough and find its real uses in society. The metaverse, I detect, is going through a little bit of that, but the trough will be less deep because you've got Sony and Apple. Well, Sony confirmed and Apple rumored to be releasing VR and mixed reality headsets next year. And when those kind of companies do something, it means they've done an awful lot of research and it tends to take off. So I'm betting on metaverse and mixed reality, but I'm betting on it really becoming big in 2024, 2025. But I'm glad you have a lot of content on it now.
For your Chat GPT podcast, was it you asking questions, or was it the artificial
No.
Jay asking questions?
So funny that you should say that. One of the people at the end said, we should even have a Chat GPT host. And I'm like, hey, wait a second. And they said, no, we didn't mean replacing you. We just meant in addition having a Chat GPT host. But I did use it with my daughter. I showed her and her friends. And the first thing they said was, write a script for an Olive Garden commercial that is sassy but family friendly. And it wrote out a very Olive Garden sounding script in script format with different roles. And then they acted it out with each of them playing a different person in the script. And of course, the next thing they said is write a song in the style of Taylor Swift. And I'll be darned if that wasn't a good song and sounded, a lot like something she would write. So it's very impressive, but with some limitations, as you well know. It sounds incredibly confident, even when it's wrong. So
I think it's, one of the reasons this will be such an outstanding topic at an event like South by Southwest is it's a lot of our sessions are really tend to be philosophic in nature of how this technology impacts society. And certainly when you're thinking about Chat GPT and whatever iterations of this come next, it is, absolutely a rethink of how we interact with society, what creativity means in the future. If you have a bot that can produce something that is this creative. Again, I look forward to being a forum where we can have some incredible discussions and incredibly smart minds address these issues.
Yeah, and you mentioned the creativity part. I've always loved that South by Southwest is about creativity. There's raging debates about whether generative AI is creative, and what is the definition of creativity. So I hope there'll be some content at South by Southwest addressing those philosophical issues.
Good. There absolutely will be. I think I was going to ask, did you read the Kevin Kelly story in I think it's this month's Wired about his take on generative AI, and his take was really that, what the art becomes then, or what the creativity becomes, is the prompts that you're putting into this AI system, which, on one hand sounds basic and reductive, but on the other hand, yeah, there's something there. So interesting.
I did not read it, but I absolutely agree with that. You can get different answers from things like ChatGPT or Dolly or whatnot based on the criteria you give it. And you can get multiple different answers for the same criteria. So ultimately, it is about your inspiration into it and your ability to curate the results that come out of it. So I think that there's an argument to be made that it's generative AI is still a creative process, but a lot of that creativity is still on the human side.
Absolutely. Yeah. So very interesting there. So again, I mean, long answer to your short question. Generative AI is certainly one of the things that has developed a lot since our entry process for speaking proposals in the summer. I think we'll have a lot of focus on that at the event. We'll also, have focus on some of the technologies that have not, fared so well during the economic downturn, and that includes all the major tech companies, big tech companies, continuing to have some challenging times and laying off people. I think that's one of the exciting things, and exciting is maybe the wrong way to put it for South by Southwest 2023, but from a glass half full perspective, every time we've had a economic downturn and people have been forced to, some people have lost their jobs, been forced to go out and iterate, and we've seen massive creativity and massive innovation 2 or 3 or 4 years later. So I think that that's one of the exciting aspects of this year's event, of people talking about, well, what do we go back and invent next? So that's really something to look forward to as well.
I agree completely. And in fact, our previous episode of the Austin Forum upload is with Angelos Angelou, well-known strategic economist. The interview was about tech and the economy. And he reminded that, the tech sector overall, people are still finding jobs. There have been some highly publicized large-scale layoffs from companies that, possibly had become big and bloated and needed to trim a little fat. But he said, these people are by and large getting additional jobs in the small and mid-sized companies where creativity sometimes can rise to the top faster, and also probably good for the startup tech economy as well. So yeah, he argued that from a market standpoint, that this was good for startups, small and mid-sized companies, but it's related to your argument about maybe some additional creativity in the tech sector.
Short-term pain, long-term gain, I hope. All this, right?
Yeah. So did you see any surprises in the submissions, or did you make any surprising decisions that may surprise attendees about niche technologies, just very recently emerging technologies, things that maybe aren't mainstream yet, maybe most people haven't even heard of or understand, or anything new in the tech content of South by 23 in that vein?
Yes, lots. Hard for me to pull them out immediately. I will say that, I don't want this to be an infomercial for Wired magazine, but I know that one of the sessions that came in through the panel picker is focused on what was the cover story of Wired, 2 or 3 months ago, about the woman who the entrepreneur, I believe, in San Francisco, who's got a technology that will extend the life of dogs. And it may be a technology that eventually can extend the lives of humans also. So this person's name is on a panel. This person is on a panel at South by Southwest 2023. I'm excited about that. Excited that we have, as always, a lot of international stuff. Continue to be excited on the various space related content we have. So, again, the beauty of the event, and sometimes the curse of the event, is that we cover so many different things, and there's a lot of kind of mainstream stuff to cover, but there's also a lot of things at the edges, some of which will always remain at the edge. Some will eventually become mainstream, and so many different ways for people to absorb and experience the event.
Well, this is all great. I'm going to ask you a few very simple questions now about your elevator pitch to, techies, to tech leaders, et cetera. And I know that we've covered a lot of it because you've made it clear that there's a set of technologies that'll be discussed, that the event is about spurring creativity, that it's often an early look at some of these things. So all of this probably feeds into your answer, but what is your elevator pitch for techies and tech professionals to come to South by?
I think the elevator pitch is a great way to learn a ton of new things, meet a ton of new people, have a ton of new experiences, get inspired, and doing all of this in a relatively short time period. And that particularly if you put some homework in beforehand to come up with a great strategy, it can be a career and life-changing experience and event. And that is that pitch changes a little if you're talking about someone who's relatively new in their career versus someone who is more advanced C-suite, but it's all pretty much the same concept there. That again, it's a place where you can just experience all kinds of new things, be inspired, be saturated with new ideas, some that you like, some that you don't like, some that you agree with, some that you don't agree with, but really a festival of creativity. And again, I'll say that as much as South by Southwest has changed in 35 plus years, we've always focused on creativity. That's always what's made it special. And back to our chat GPT discussion, creativity is still going to be what slightly separates us, maybe a little less so now than before, from the machines, from the algorithms, from the bots, and so even more important now than it ever was before.
That's great. So South by obviously has the greatest benefit from those who can attend in person, and so much of that inspiration comes from the meetings that you have with people there, sometimes the unexpected relationships that you make there. But not everybody can come to South by. In some years past, it seemed like everybody in the world was there because of the huge numbers, but most people around the globe can't make it to South by. How can they benefit from all this great content you've put together? And especially in 2023, where we're all aware that people are absorbing content ever more online, being in interactive meetings online, et cetera. What is the set of programming that South by is making available to people who can't make it in person?
Well, we will shortly, and may have happened by the time people listen to this podcast, be selling an online pass. So people can experience the event online. There will also be a small amount of content that is live streamed for free, so people can experience that way. For people who are in Austin who don't buy a badge, there are a lot of South by Southwest. There are a lot of events around South by Southwest that you can get a lot of the look and feel of South by Southwest from. But all sorts of different ways to again be involved. And one of the things that's new and different since last I talked to Austin Forum audiences is we have announced our first ever South by Southwest branded event outside of the US. So that is South by Sydney, which occurs in October 2023. So for our friends in Australia and New Zealand and the Pacific Rim who could never travel to Austin, you'll have a South by Southwest event of your own coming very soon. And we're extremely pumped about all the possibilities that brings to the table.
Yeah, I'm actually super excited about that. I've never been to Australia, so I think I'm going to use it as my excuse for vacation to go down there. By the way, you mentioned a lot of free content. Is there a simple way our listeners can find that on your website? A simple URL shortcut?
I think it's still sxsw.com/free. And that tends to get more populated as we get closer to March. So it probably doesn't have a whole lot of content on there in mid to late January, but we'll have a lot more stuff as we get closer to the start of the event.
Great. And a couple of final questions. Can you give us a feel for the registration numbers and just how are the in-person numbers looking in 2023? We, of course, South by didn't happen for a couple of years during the pandemic, but what are the numbers looking like now? Are we back to the old numbers?
We're not, I don't think we expect to be back to where we were in 2019, but the numbers are looking very healthy. And one of the things we're particularly excited about, or I'm particularly excited about, is we're seeing a lot of return participation from internationals. We were particularly impacted on the international side of the fence by the pandemic. And even in last year at South by Southwest 2022, while the US was largely over the pandemic or over Omicron by the time March happened, that wasn't necessarily the case outside the US. I think that's, knock on wood, we'll have more international participants in 2023 than we did in 2022. And that's always one of the things that makes I think makes the event so special, is to see different cultures in Austin during the event, hear different people speaking different languages, interacting with those people, learning with those people, making connections with those people that can lead to new opportunities elsewhere.
I agree completely. Yeah, I believe that last year at South by, you still needed a proof of COVID test negative result to enter the US. I think that was relaxed in June or July last year. I remember having some colleagues stranded in Germany because they didn't pass the test. And then 1 week later, the requirement for the test went away, but they spent an extra week in Germany. So Hugh, any parting thoughts from you? Anything you want to tell the Austin Forum listeners about South by 23 that we haven't covered yet?
Well, just want to again thank the Austin Forum and its community and you, Jay, for all your support over the years. Say how excited we at South by Southwest are to be getting back to pre-pandemic levels. We've talked a lot about various different kinds of content and themes for the 2023 event. The one that I haven't mentioned that I'm really excited about also is us doing more transportation related content for 2023. One of my mantras is that South by Southwest is always a strong reflection of what is hot and trending in Austin. And whether you like Elon Musk or not, the fact that there's a big Tesla plant in Austin has made Austin much more of a hub for transportation, and made sense then, therefore, that we have a transportation track at South by Southwest. And there's a lot of really cool, very innovative leaders of the transportation industry that will speak, leaders of the transportation industry that will be speaking in March in Austin as well. And I'm really, really excited about that.
Well, this sounds great. And I'm even more jazzed after this interview. Thank you for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you soon at an Austin Forum event, and then in about 2 months at South by Southwest.
Thanks so much, Jay. Always good to connect and talk ideas and all kinds of good things like that.
And thank you to our listeners. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you'll consider attending South by Southwest. And I look forward to meeting you there if you do. If you decide to attend, you can send email to info@austinforum.org to let us know that you're there. And we might interview you on a live podcast that day for our Austin Forum audience about what you're finding at South by Southwest that's inspiring you and that has got you excited about the future. So with that, Hugh, I'll say thanks and have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks for listening to the Austin Forum Upload. You can listen to additional episodes and check out a schedule of our monthly in-person events at austinforum.org. The Upload is a production of the Austin Forum on Technology and Society, a nonprofit organization here in Austin, Texas.